The piercing scream of a captive woman cut through the chaos of a pirate raid. That single plea for help initiated a massive rescue mission, led by a 17-year-old boy. Muhammad bin Qasim is remembered as the Conqueror of Sindh, the military commander who opened the gateway for Islam into India. Today, a modern historical debate frames him as either a hero or a villain. In the 8th century, when state borders met, they became shared stakeholders in the resources of the frontier, from minerals to trade taxes. Historically, when two expanding powers grew to occupy the same border area, the competition for those resources often led to conflict. During the Rashidun Caliphate, the Muslim empire expanded rapidly eastward through present-day Iran. That expansion physically slowed at the banks of the Indus River, which formed a massive natural barrier. Military campaigns towards Sindh had already been attempted multiple times before the 8th century. With both empires competing for the same trade routes, a full-scale confrontation only needed a specific catalyst to cross the river. That catalyst arrived at the start of the 8th century. A Muslim trading convoy carrying gifts from the king of Sri Lanka lost its way in a storm and drifted near the coast of Debal. Here, local pirates boarded the ships, killed the men, and took the women and children prisoner. A captured woman called out to Hajjaj bin Yusuf. Hajjaj was a famously tyrannical and cruel Umayyad governor in Iraq, but he fiercely defended the state's authority and the safety of its trade routes. This flowchart traces regional tensions leading to the invasion. While some modern accounts suggest Hajjaj was hunting religious refugees, the Chachnama, the oldest history of Sindh, records that Raja Dahir was actually harboring the Alafi brothers, two fugitives who murdered an Umayyad governor in Makran. Hajjaj wrote to Raja Dahir demanding the extradition of the murderers and the release of the captive women and children. Dahir refused, claiming the pirates were outside his control. This refusal threatened the vital Arabian Sea trade route, providing a clear casus belli. After two initial military campaigns failed, Hajjaj took a massive gamble. He financed 6,000 elite Syrian soldiers, equipped them with a massive catapult, and entrusted the entire operation to his 17-year-old son-in-law, Muhammad Bin Qasim. Sending a relative to lead the invasion was a calculated strategy. Hajjaj passed over the veteran generals for a teenager he could trust completely, one whose training focused on unconventional tactics and psychological pressure, rather than the traditional methods that had already failed twice. Muhammad bin Qasim arrived at the heavily fortified city of Debal. The city's true defense was psychological. A 40-yard flag waved from the highest temple, and a local superstition suggested that as long as the flag stood intact, Debal could never be conquered. This trajectory visualization demonstrates the tactical challenge Qasim faced. Instead of battering the thick stone walls, he deployed his heavy artillery, a giant catapult named Al-Arus. He ordered his men to target the flag. Firing a heavy stone into the center of a city to hit a flagpole required precise variables. The first shots missed. After adjusting the launch angles, the final stone hit the pole, sending the massive flag crashing to the ground. The defenders' morale instantly evaporated. With their superstition broken, the defending army began to flee. Muslim forces entered Debal within hours, liberating the captives. Qasim secured his first foothold by recognizing that the target was the enemy's morale, not their physical fortifications. This success caused neighboring cities like Narankot and Sewan to surrender without drawing a single sword. The final confrontation took place in 712 AD at Aror. Raja Dahir fielded 50,000 trained soldiers and hundreds of war elephants. These animals functioned like ancient tanks, armored in iron and carrying archers who could target the field from a high vantage point. Realizing close-quarters combat against elephants would be a disaster, Qasim deployed a specialized tactic. He ordered his best archers to wrap their arrowheads in cloth soaked in naphtha and target the trunks of the war elephants. A flaming arrow struck the seating area on Raja Dahir's own elephant. The panicked animal stampeded straight toward the river and the Muslim lines. In the ensuing chaos, an arrow struck Dahir, ending his government and his life before sunset. With the opposing army defeated, Qasim sheathed his sword. He issued a decree stating that anyone who surrendered would have their life, property, and places of worship protected. He granted Hindu and Buddhist temples the same legal status as Christian churches and Jewish synagogues. He continued to prioritize administrative continuity. When he needed administrators to collect taxes, he simply retained the local Hindu Brahmins who had already been performing that role under the previous regime. Qasim's administration focused on the continuity of local law. When his tenure eventually ended, the local Buddhist and Hindu populations, who had seen their temples protected and their tax collectors retained, reportedly wept at his departure. He won the territory through force, but managed it through administrative stability. 1,000 years after this conquest, the French Revolution birthed the modern concept of nationalism. Suddenly, history began to be viewed through the lens of language and rigid geographic borders, assigning heroes based on ethnicity. This shift led modern movements to frame Raja Dahir as a native son of the soil. However, historical records indicate Dahir was a Kashmiri Brahmin whose family had snatched the government from the indigenous Buddhist Sindhis to establish their own rule. The philosopher Allama Iqbal warned against this ideological shift. He argued that organizing human history around bloodlines and ethnic idols fractures the unity of the Muslim identity and obscures historical merit. Applying modern nationalism to the 8th century often creates a contradiction. This lens can lead to the defense of a ruler like Dahir based solely on geography, while overlooking that his own subjects, the local Buddhists, actually found much more administrative inclusion under the foreign commander they later deified. Back in the 8th century, the politics in Damascus turned fatal. In 715 AD, Caliph Suleiman ascended to the Umayyad throne. He harbored a deep, entirely personal hatred for Hajjaj bin Yusuf and systematically began removing every trace of Hajjaj's influence. Suleiman ordered the removal and execution of the empire's most successful generals. Deep into his campaign, Qasim received a letter demanding he hand over his command to a new governor and return to Damascus immediately. Qasim's officers urged him to ignore the order and establish an independent kingdom in Sindh. Despite knowing a death warrant likely awaited him, Qasim refused to rebel. He surrendered himself as a prisoner of the state. Later accounts invented a cinematic tale where Dahir's daughters tricked the caliph into executing Qasim. The reality was purely political. Qasim was locked in solitary confinement in an Iraqi prison, where he died at just 20 years old, a victim of the internal purge of Hajjaj's relatives. The Umayyad court allowed personal vendettas to destroy a strategic talent. While the political shifts in Damascus eventually weakened their hold on the region, they could not erase the impact of the young commander. Through his administrative character, Muhammad bin Qasim firmly opened the subcontinent to Islam,